everyone. Welcome to Darpin Dialogue. Hi, Jack. Most
Hi.
welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, you're most welcome. So, busy times,
Yes.
and you've left Mayor McCallum's Surrey Coalition. So, tell us a little bit about that. How did that decision come about?
Well, I was the last out of the three to leave Safe Surrey Coalition, which I did so last fall. And it was primarily, I think, around, you sort of saw the divide happen shortly after the election when we walked right into the budget. And during that first budget, there was decisions made around really not investing anything more into our public safety by way of police and fire at that point, cancelling some of the programs that were actually committed to by the previous council, such as the rink in Cloverdale. So all these issues sort of accumulated, and then okay, so we're through that first budget. Let's try to work together on the team. But really, the mayor and his team closed up ranks pretty quick. That either you're with us or you're not.
Right.
So when the communication stopped, I reached out a few times saying, can we meet middle ground here and have talk the issues, because when you get elected, whether you're the mayor or one of the councillors, you represent the entire city, not just those that may have voted for you or not, or even those that maybe didn't even come out to vote. So you have this diverse group of people out there that have different needs, and you have to look after and address those needs as well. So it got to a point as well, just with the lack of communication and certainly the transparency. And when that police transition report came out, just how it was framed, sent over to the province with really no consultation from council or council members.
Okay.
So to me, that was a very important piece, because prior to even me supporting the mayor on this, I was very clear in that, I'll support a transition provided it provides that financial benefit to the taxpayer, but there's a feasibility as well that goes with it, where we actually know what are we getting.
It was all about going from the Surrey RCMP and making that transition to the local police force. And then it seemed like you were for the Surrey RCMP and there was a change in stance. So we were wondering why that happened.
So prior to, I announced as an independent beforehand, and I was always talked about, safety as being one of the key things I ran on.
Mm-hmm.
Safety, transparency, and bringing in an ethics commission as well. So all those pieces beforehand. So when the mayor reached out a few times prior to and asked myself and Councillor Locke at that point to join his team, it was with the commitment that, we will do that review. We'd look at it. And even prior to me casting my ballot that night, I was very clear when I spoke in council and said, prior to voting on this, I want to be very clear that I support this, provided it does provide that financial benefit to the taxpayers, and we actually see what the difference is going to be. Now, as we look at that transition report, as it developed and came out, it came out and stated, look, we're going to have less police officers for more money. So the logic behind that would be, I can't support any report that says we're going to make Surrey less safe, right? Gotcha. And if it's all about changing out a uniform, when I reference if you look at a burning building, really, and the firemen are there and you have enough firemen putting out the fire, do you really care what color the truck is?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Right.
So the same philosophy applies in here. So we have programs now that are working and seem to be working, and we've gotten the 10-year stats now this past few months as well, that states the crime level in Surrey is actually trending down. So we have to balance that now. If we're going to place a significant financial cost onto the taxpayers, what are we getting on the other hand? And as we're doing that, what else are we sacrificing? So really in this last budget, we saw that there's no new rec facilities coming in here. There's not going to be any infrastructure built out on the roadways. We have a Skytrain, which the mayor promised at one point, $1.6 billion will get us all the way to into Clayton, which we now know it's only going to go 7 kilometers to 4 stops to the middle of Guildford. 70% of the community wants to retain and work with what we have today. There's a small segment that really wants to deviate away, thinking somehow that a municipal police force is going to make the difference. And there's ways to improve the RCMP as we have today. We know today that in Alberta and in Nova Scotia and other parts of the country, you can actually establish a police board with the RCMP that functions just like an normal police board. So if you're able to take the best of governance out of that as well, balance it against the cost, and you can actually come up with a much better product on the other end. If the goal is at the end of the day to make Surrey safer in our community, how do we do that? So if you look at even our fire department, we've been grossly underserved in our fire service. Nationally, if you look at the national average, is one firefighter to 1,000 people. In Surrey, our ratio is one firefighter to 1,500 people.
Right.
So there's gaps not just in the policing and fire and emergency services that I think we need to address in a very much a realistic way.
Right, right. You're split away from Doug McCallum's Safe Surrey Coalition, and now you're with Brenda Locke. How does that impact sort of how things are going to happen and decisions are going to be made at the Surrey City Hall level?
Well, I think if you're an avid watcher of council, you'll see consistently that there's always, not always, but quite a lot, there's a 5-4, 5-4 split.
Right.
On some key issues, and generally we actually vote together unanimously. If you go back and look at the voting record, we generally vote together. But on some issues, there's a defined 4-5 split.
Right.
So I think it's a bit of a misnomer to say that you can't get anything done. Council is just one part of the governance. There's a lot of work that you do with staff on a one-to-one level to advance programs, to bring issues from the community. Because every time when a community member reaches out to me, it's not something I bring to council. So the work still continues in the background. You don't necessarily see it. The only time I think people get a sort of peek into council is when they see it on a Monday night online.
Right.
But the work still continues, and you still advocate for your citizens.
Do you think Surrey's changed a tremendous amount? Or Doug McCallum now being in position as mayor of the city?
Absolutely. I think it's Surrey's actually become more divisive. That's been my experience on it, because now you actually have a very, very, it's almost like a one agenda item. And when you have the vast majority of the taxpayers in the city saying, look, we're not necessarily in agreement with that, that just causes natural division. You have petitions out there with, 38,000, I think last time I counted, community members saying, look, we want to keep what we have today in public safety. But we're prepared to work upon it. Then you have different community groups and business groups stepping up and saying, look, this is not what we want. So what I'm finding now is that it's actually really become divisive. And up until I'll probably say this last budget that was in December, a lot of it was just on print or on radio is what we saw. But when you saw that actual split in council chambers, it was something really, that you saw this huge split. Really, on one hand, you have people talking about a municipal police force. On the other hand, you're actually another group talking about the budget overall. So I think that split has happened in the city. And in some ways, you could almost say, Surrey is almost like a tale of two cities in that sense, where you have the north and the south and different priorities and, different demographics. So for me, I find that as a challenge moving forward now.
So with that said then, the citizens of Surrey, when they're electing city councillors, they're putting their faith and trust in you that you're going to get the projects done, that you're going to move them forward. Mm-hmm. So when they see this lack of transparency, when they see councillors are leaving, how do you want to reestablish that faith and trust?
I think people need to be informed. It's key to advocate for what your community needs. Now, in this council, we have 2 councillors that don't even live in Surrey, right? So the first thing is educate yourself where people are, what they're doing, and what their commitment has been to bring them up to this point. What's been their investment as politicians into the community? What have they done for the last few years? What ideas are they coming? What are they championing with? So I think that's a good starting point for people. And I think how people can get involved is also to look at those issues that are important to you and find out where they are. Like, we know for the next generation coming up,
right,
raising a family is key. Housing is going to be key. Affordability is going to be key.
Climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. All these points. And when you start looking at it,
right,
and you actually start thinking, okay, well, 10 and 15 years, I'm going to be buying a home.
Right.
What's my home going to look like? And we're actually seeing a shift now from people that would otherwise say, look, you need to buy land and property. And now it's becoming a price point issue. Look, I can only afford $500,000. But what can I get for $500,000? I'm not even worried about property anymore. It's an affordability issue. And we're seeing that with this next generation of youth coming in here. We do have a low voter turnout, generally for municipal elections. The last one was at 30, 2.7%, I
Right,
believe.
right.
So when we have such a low voter turnout, part of it is that I think people just really don't have the time or the inkling to educate themselves. But when you vote on a municipal government, you're voting for your public safety, your roadways,
Right.
your schools, the things that impact you, your development around your home and your community, where you work. So those are important things. So I'd say for residents is keep yourself informed. And I got to say, in the last year, I think people have actually started to become more informed. And, things like social media has been a big help in that.
Right.
You have this next generation of people bringing up their families here, growing here, working here, that we do see, social media is going to be an important part of it, but also the education piece as well.
Jack Hundial, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thank you.
To watch Tharpan's videos on what's happening, what's new, what's trending, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Like and share and subscribe.